tutorial in this tutorial series about Paltalk programming. Last tutorial we had a look at Autopilot and he showed us how to use his Paltalk room selector, DLL, and how to include that into a project and modify the module that came with it. In this tutorial we're going to write some VB.NET code, so you'll have to bear with me here because I'm a Delphi programmer, not a VB.NET, any .NET coder for that matter. And we're going to attempt to make something ourselves. I'm using Sharp Develop. It's a free program or IDE that can compile VB and C#. We'll be making this in VB today because I know most people do use VB. So I'm going to go and open it up, make a new solution, and you'll do the same in Visual Studio if that's what you're using. And we can call this tutorial number 3. It creates our form for us and we have our source code here. As with previous tutorials, you've seen how EnumWindows function works, and now we'll be looking at it a little bit more in depth. Specifically EnumChildWindows. We're going to get the top window, which will be this room here, Cheesy Doodle Adult Room, Voice Room, and we're going to get that by its class name, and then from there we're going to pass that through EnumChildWindows, the handle to that main window, and we're going to pass it through EnumChildWindows, which calls our own custom function, and in that custom function we're going to determine why it's enumerating through all the controls and windows if it has the correct one that we want. And we're going to do that by using getDialogControlID. Now, most of the snippets you might see on the websites, they all have one thing in common, and that's calling the EnumChildWindows over and over again. I'm going to try and prevent that a little bit by creating a new class or record, and it's like a container which is going to hold our incoming, our outgoing, and our nick list handles, and also the main window handle. We're going to do it like this because later on in the tutorial series we're going to make an array of these, and we can have one for each room, and we won't have to enumerate through all the windows each time we want to send a bit of text. We'd only have to check the top window handle to make sure it's valid. So to do that, I'm going to first start off just under here, and actually to start off with I'm going to import a couple of things. So do imports, system, runtime, and into op services. Must have that up there, otherwise we're going to have issues later on. So the first thing we're going to do is make that container which is going to hold our handles to all the windows or controls that we need. And it's going to be a public class, and we're going to call it, let's not call it that, let's call it Power Handles. And in that class we're going to have variables in there. One will be the main handle, as type integer pointer. Next one will be a handle to our incoming text. That's also going to be an integer pointer. Actually, all of these handles are going to be integer pointers, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Our third one will be to outgoing text, a handle for that. And we can also add to this class later on. We can add strings, type strings, and we can probably get text and send text to it. But that will be in later series. What else we need? Our nick list, which we won't be using in this tutorial, but like I said, in later tutorials we'll be having a look at how we can get the usernames out of the nick list. So I think that should do. The next thing we want to do is import all these APIs that we'll be using. So pinvoke, that's our friend. The first one we're going to be importing is EnumChildWindows. Put it in the search there and it should come up. Look for the VB signature. So now that's imported. One of the things it takes as a value is EnumWindowProc. So we're going to have to declare one of them also. It should be on the same page somewhere. Okay, user defined type. The VB one. So we'll be needing that. And before we go any further, we're going to have to change this, and I'll explain why later on. The parameters here. It's expecting an integer as a value. And this one. But we are going to pass it one of these. And the same here. So this is going to call our function, which calls this function with the same value here. So when this gets called, this is done by Windows, it will enumerate through all the child handles of the main handle that we've given it, and it will come back and call this function here, which we're going to make our own custom one, and it will give it a handle and whatever parameter we've given it, which needs to be the same here. So the next API we want to be importing would be FindWindow. So we FindWindow. We'll just go back there a second. In the next tutorial, we'll probably be using EnumWindows when we're going to get multiple windows that are open. But for this tutorial, it's a single window, so we just need FindWindow. So we're going to find in the first one it comes across. So here are the VBNet signatures. We can do it by FindWindow, and the value is its class name as a string and window name as a string. Or we can do it by FindWindow by class. I'm going to use this one here, FindWindow by class, because we'll be using the class. They're basically the same, they're just set different. So we're going to add that. And the reason we set these as integer pointers is because it returns an integer pointer. And the same with the parent handle here. When we call out EnumChildWindows, it expects an integer pointer, which we'll be setting here. We need some more APIs, believe it or not. This is the one thing I do not like about .NET. The other APIs we'll be using is window visible, and you'll see why we'll be using that. Once we start coding. So we've got that. And the final one will be get dialog control ID. Which is here, and we import that. So now we have all our imports we can start coding. One of the things we'll do is we'll do it on a button event, so when we click the button we will get all the windows that we need. So just add a button, double click it, and come back into the event. And the first thing we want to do is make a new class of this type, power handles. And with that we want to set the top main handle. What do we call that? Main handle. Find window by class. And find window by class takes in, where is it gone? Takes in the class name. So we'll come back here. We'll find out the class name. So we're trying to get the top handle here. So if you're using any spy program, Windows Spy program, you just get the top level, which is this main window here, and you'll see the class name come up here. So we copy that. That's what we are looking for. And 0. I'll put new there. And to make sure that is working, let's go ahead and add something here to show that it's working. Maybe a text box. Let's rename this. Text equals WinInfo to string. Let's see if that works. Needs to be a shared function. If we're using on the form like we are, it needs to be shared. Let's try that. So when we click the button, we get the handle. Let's see if it's the same as what we've got there. So we've got the correct handle. It's a good start. So now that we have the handle of the main window in our little container here, we can go ahead and use it. But the first thing we want to do is check to make sure it's a valid handle. So we can go if equals 0, then exit sub. So basically if we don't get a valid handle, we'll exit this click event, and that will be the end of it. If we do, we'll continue, and if it continues, it will add our handle to our text box there. And now we're going to call EnumChildWindows, and the values that they take in is the parent handle, which will be this one, pointer to our function, which we haven't yet written, which we should do now. So we can go ahead and put public shared function, and we're going to call it process child Windows. The values, we've already stipulated the values that it must take in and what it returns. So we're basically making one of these. So when we call this function here, it will call this function of our own with the handle that it's currently at. So now we have a function. We can pass that to a pointer. To our newly function, and the last one, which we set to our own class here, which will hold all these values, will be winfo. Now, so we've called this, which in turn calls our newly created function with the current handle and what we passed here. So the first thing we should do is, did we import that? Yeah, we did. We should get the ID, if it has an ID. Now there are two different types here. One's taking in this type, get dialog control, and the input is the handle, D, and we can do nothing at the moment. I was going to say int 32. I think that's how you do it in VB. Let's test. Oh, ID. Yeah, I didn't think so. Doesn't matter, we'll get a little warning saying int pointer to integer. Now the .NET programmers would probably know how to change this, but not being a .NET programmer, I'm not 100% sure. So we only get a warning and it will work. And the next thing we want to do is make an if statement. If is window visible and the handle, if it equals true, then so what it's saying here is that each handle it gets back from the EnumChildWindows, each handle is returning to our function. We're testing if it's visible. If it is, then we'll further process it. The further processing will be checking the ID. And if it's the ID we want, we'll set our class, our power handles, which will be L parameters, to the handle. So we use case select of ID, and we do case. Now the first one we'll be looking for will be the, let me fire this back up, will be the incoming text. So we just drop our little pointer over there and we get the dialog ID of 202. 202, and if that's true, we can set the L param H incoming equals HWND. So next case we want to look at is the outgoing. So we put our little handle spy over that and find out it's 203. 203, and if that's true, we can set our little class there for outgoing to the handle value. And the final one will be the nick list. So we grab our little thing, point it over to the nickname list, and find out it's 1789. The handle for nick list is the handle. Case else, return true. What it is here is that if we return false on any of these, it will stop the enumerating process. So we want to return true. So if none of these match up to what we need, we want to keep enumerating through the window, so we return true. If this doesn't get called at all, if the window is not visible, we still want to return true until it enumerates through all the controls. Let's just tab this out a little bit. And what am I missing here? End selector, aren't I? And that's it. Uh-oh. Do apologise for that. It's some of my poor VB.NET coding. Incoming, isn't it? Ah, got to rename them correctly would be a good start too. So let's try that. And it works. The handle there. So once this is finished enumerating through all the child windows, it should have filled our W info with all the information we need. So let's copy that. So the first one is our main handle. This one can be our incoming. That can be our outgoing. And that can be our nick list. Let's just name them so we have a name that we can correspond with. Nick list. Outgoing. Incoming. So as we did here, we'll start to set the text here for them. Obviously it won't be them exactly, it will be incoming. Outgoing. Nick list. Main handle, which I should have left to start with. So we got incoming, outgoing, nick list, and the main handle. Let's test it. Wasn't very smart, was it? So we've got no errors. We did have a warning though. And there we have. I'm sure we can use something here. Maybe not. Anyway, that pretty much sums it up. Just so we know what we're looking at, we can add a few labels. Click the button just to verify. So we'll take our little handle spy. We'll first take the main handle. That matches. Then we'll do our incoming text handle. That matches. Now outgoing. That matches. And our nick list, which also matches. And we'll call it quits there for today. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and hopefully you should be making your own. As you can see, it's not much code. I think it took more time to actually declare these APIs than I did to code the thing. But I guess that's the thing with .NET. So our next tutorials, I think we'll steer away from handles, start looking at what we can do with handles. I mean, steer away from getting the handles, because we should have a good idea on how to get them now. And we'll look at what we can do with these handles, like sending text, receiving text, etc. So until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.